Hey, and welcome to the Pursuit of Healthiness Podcast. I'm your host, Winanda van Delft. I'm a health and mindset coach, spaghetti and ice cream lover, travel junk, and a cat mom. Today's guest is Dr. Elizabeth Eisenring, better known as Dr. Liz. Dr. Liz is Director of LINC Nutrition, Adjunct Honorary Professor at Bond University, international speaker, author of over 150 peer-reviewed scientific papers, and received over $4 million in research support. Dr. Liz is passionate about improving lives through evidence-based nutrition. She has been on the board of the Maggie Beer Foundation, Dietitian Connection, MASCC and AuSPEN. As a foodie, Dr. Liz loves to help people improve their health, fitness, energy, and vitality via 3 pillars of mindset, menu, and movement. Okay, so welcome Elizabeth to my podcast today. How are you doing?
Hello, I am so well, thank you, and I'm excited about having our chat.
Okay, amazing. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am Liz Eisenring. People know me as Dr. Liz. I run an online nutrition and wellness business. And up until fairly recently, I was an academic. So I was a professor of nutrition and dietetics and head of program for a Master of Nutrition and Dietetics at Bond University on the Gold Coast in Australia. And so as part of that, I've managed to teach the next generation of nutritionists. I did a lot of research, did quite a lot of travel before COVID, and generally was really happy and loved it. And I think I probably would have continued being a professor and an academic for life, probably. But a little bit over a year ago, sort of a couple of things happened all at once. It was kind of like the perfect storm. So I was very stressed, and looking back, I think I probably was heading for burnout because, I was a working mum in a very senior position and had a lot of responsibilities. And that around about a very similar time, I had 2 friends, one after another, diagnosed with cancer. And my PhD was actually in nutrition to support people through their cancer journey. And so I've actually, myself and my team have written some of the key guidelines for the area. And so you'd think I'd know a lot. And while I do know a lot in that space, what was really interesting was seeing my friends go through that journey. I sort of looked at it through a different lens, and it just gave me a whole different perspective. So basically supporting them through that and seeing the good parts of the care, but then just some huge gaps as well. They weren't even informed about these guidelines and these recommendations that we had published years ago. So it kind of just made me, I think, question everything. So whether you want to call it a midlife crisis or a spiritual awakening or whatever it is, but it just really made me question my life. So I kind of reassessed some things and prioritized a little bit differently. And so part of that was then realizing that while the research and the academic was important, and I'll still keep my hand in there, I really just wanted to help people now with good information and good support now. So I've transitioned into the business world, which is quite different actually.
Yeah, interesting. So you said you were helping and studying like nutrition and cancer and how to guide people through that. So what is, because there's a lot of information out there, like you said, like people are not informed well enough, or there are gaps in all of that. What is the biggest gap that you think people should know when it comes to diseases and nutrition and what's not been told?
Yeah, I think the big one is just how having a good foundation of nutrition and eating well. And of course, as part of that is stress management and movement. So general healthy living, but how important that is in terms of helping you to get through treatment and to recover from treatment. And as you said, everyone's an individual, and a lot of the chemotherapies and the treatments now are so individualized. It's hard to sort of generalize. They're so different for each person, but just that it makes a big difference, and that there are certain things like, for example, after surgery or during chemotherapy, it's often very important to have a good intake of protein, because those sort of treatments, as well as damaging the tumor cells, they damage your healthy cells as well. So protein's sort of the building block of the body, so it's important to have enough. But if you don't know about that, and the other thing is, when people have a big health scare, they're often very motivated to make changes, which is good, but sometimes those changes can be a bit dramatic if they haven't had the right information. You know, they might decide to go vegan or only green foods, or all, and of course there's all sorts of extreme diets out there, and a lot of sort of misinformation. And so I guess the first thing is just to know that it makes a difference, and it's important to be aware of it and get some information on it. And the second thing is to know exactly what's going to be helpful, and not to do anything too strict or too crazy, because some of them can actually interfere, you know, with the chemotherapy or some of those treatments as well. So I guess with my friends, the biggest frustration, because one actually had a type of cancer that was heavily influenced by nutrition. The other one, not so much, but it still can make a difference. And neither of them, you know, everyone spoke about pain management, skin management, and how to manage the nausea and everything else, but no one at all mentioned nutrition. And one of them in particular had a lot of problems during chemotherapy, a lot of nausea, wasn't eating, lost a lot of weight. And yeah, so it's just this huge gap. And I thought, you know, we have good information, we've got resources, you know, why weren't we, why didn't they have access to them? And they had, you know, they went to good hospitals. And one of them, you know, said something that really sort of stuck with me, which was kind of like, because actually the support during the chemotherapy was pretty good. But then after that, you know, as she sort of said, it was like we were sort of just spat out of the system to try and pull our lives and all the broken pieces back together again.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how they felt. It's, you know, you get the shock of the diagnosis, you're suddenly having all this treatment that you don't really understand what's going on. And you're still very sick or have side effects, and then bang, you're kind of discharged home to sort of, you know, pull it all together again. And I just thought, I'll be, you know, yeah, exactly. That there should be a better way. So I was sort of inspired to try and help fill those gaps, because, you know, the knowledge that I have is quite specialised around that area. So I was sort of originally, because my business is called LINC Nutrition, so originally I was hoping to be a link between the hospital and the home. So I do support people with cancer. So it's one of the things I do. But the interesting thing is while I do, that's what I thought I was going to be doing with my business, I actually seem to be attracting a lot of very busy women who are under stress or burnout, and during COVID, you know, too much emotional eating, a lot of drinking, and basically just wanting to get to help look after their health and fitness again, and sort of get their lives a bit back. So yeah, so I thought I was, you know, going to be the cancer nutrition guru, and I do that, and I enjoy that. But I would say at the moment I'm mainly supporting busy women to get healthy and happy. That's sort of the main thing I'm doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how does nutrition link to stress or disease or cancer? Like, how important is it really?
Yeah, it is important. Now, of course, I'm biased, and I'm going to say that, but it's not just my opinion. The science and the research does actually back that up, and we're finding out more and more all the time. So I think from a couple of different perspectives. So the first is that we have such a powerful link and two-way communication between our brain and our gut. And I think, you know, we've sort of known for a while that how we think affects our gut. That's not so surprising. You know, if someone is asked to give a speech or to sit an exam, they might feel really nervous and you know, have those sort of butterflies in their stomach. Yeah. But we've only more recently learnt that what we eat does affect our mood, our thoughts, anxiety. It can be involved in food cravings, which is very interesting. Different bacteria that live in our guts, in our intestines, can actually lead us to have different cravings, whether it's for fatty foods or high sugar foods. And it's different types of bacteria can actually cause us to have cravings for different types of food, which is, I think, really interesting. Yeah. Sleep and anxiety. It is, and it's a little bit like, I think it's fascinating, but also a little bit scary that, we're not fully like we think we're in control. We're not fully in control. There's all these different signals and things happening all over the place, and it's a lot of it seems to be the compounds that some of the bacteria in our gut produce, that can have a positive influence. They can help us feel relaxed or happy and sleep well, but they can also have a negative influence if we have too much processed food or very artificial food, and they can make make us feel more tense, more anxious, and have the food craving. So there is a really important link, and we know that basically eating more of those foods that are found in nature, like plenty of whole foods and vegetables and berries and those sorts of things, are good for pretty much everything. They're good for your skin, but they're particularly good for your gut health and also your brain health. So I think it's really important, and we understand a lot more now than we did, but I think it is such a fascinating area. I think over the next decade or so, we're just going to learn more and more and more.
Yeah, it is fascinating. But what I always ask, and I found different articles about that, because in processed food, of course, there is a lot of chemical stuff in it, but what's the difference between eating something high sugary or like a fruit that's high in sugar? How is there a difference even? How does the body react to that?
How is it different? Yeah, yes and no. This is one of those difficult questions, which is where we kind of say it all depends. It all depends. In a simplistic level, I would always argue that eating whole food or something like fruit generally is treated better, because it has all the fiber, it has a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it takes a little while. Not necessarily, like sometimes fruit can be very quickly digested by the body, but it's more natural form. It's got good stuff in it as well. I think the challenge with processed foods is it tends to have, particularly if it's very high in fructose syrup or other sort of sugars, so it's very high in sugars, often doesn't have much fiber, so it's not slowing down the absorption of those sugars, and often it doesn't have too many vitamins or minerals, or if it does, this is the crazy thing, they have to add it back in because it's so processed. So for example, a lot of the breads and the cereals, you look at them and they say source of iron or source of whatever and B vitamins, and you think, oh, that's great, but then you have a look, it might be that the flour or whatever's so processed, they actually have to add in all those extra vitamins and things that they took out during the processing. So I would always argue that fruit or whatever is better tolerated because of the other things in them. However, the bit where I say there are some similarities, it's true. If it's a carbohydrate, they eventually get broken down into its simplest form, which is generally glucose. Sometimes it might be fructose, or and then get broken down into glucose. So I think sometimes the messaging around all the different sugars can be confusing. People say, oh, I don't eat sugar, but then they might have agave syrup or different types of nectars and things. And at the end of the day, most of them still get broken down into glucose, which is treated similarly by the body. So that's just where I caution a little bit. Sometimes people think they're doing the right thing, but they're still having sugar. It's just by a different name. But the whole, sugar and fruit versus processed food, I would still, go the fruit every time because it's got a lot of goodies in it as well. Yeah. And then I guess for those who are really concerned, then you can go with a more low carbohydrate type thing like berries. And then you get the goodies without much.
Yeah.
Well. So is that sort of, so is sort of what you were, or what is that sort of what you were getting at about?
Yeah. Because I know a lot of people
processed food and
because I know a lot of people know, it's sugar, but in fruit is also sugar. But so basically it's kind of treated the same way in your body, but with fruit you get more benefits from it, like the vitamins and minerals and the fibers, and so in the end it's much better for you.
That's right, slows it down.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think so. And the more, like I said, I've sort of studied nutrition for the 20 years, and you know, it's one of those things, particularly in nutrition, because it's so fascinating. You know, sometimes it's one of those things, the more you learn, the more you realize there's so much more we need to learn.
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer in the power of nature, and that, you know, we've evolved to digest and tolerate certain things. So first of all, I think we're incredibly adaptable, and we can tolerate, you know, a whole wide range of things. That's the good news. But I think the other thing is that as soon as we sort of veer away too far from foods as they're found in nature, I generally think that's not such a great idea, because, you know, we might have only had decades or 100 years or so to, you know, have some of these very processed foods. And the problem, some of the things we have now are highly processed, really, really processed, which, you know, for thousands of years we've had them in different forms. So I must admit, I'm very much into getting back to nature, enjoying a wide range of foods. I think eating and food is one of life's greatest pleasures. So I really have enjoyment and you know, like to know the farmers and the farmers markets and buy all the food and prepare all the food. But yeah, I must admit, I don't like the idea of ultra processed foods. I just don't think we're designed to eat a lot of them. I mean, we can handle a little bit now and again, but I think most people eat way too much processed food, perhaps without even realizing it, because it's just so widely available now.
Well, my teacher used to say when I was studying nutrition, she would always say, like, if it doesn't look like it comes from the tree or doesn't look like it comes from nature, you have to think twice before eating it. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like, you don't see a bread tree or something like that, or a pasta tree, or I was like, yeah, that's true.
I think there's something to that. And then, like, you know, the similar thing, if your grandparents or great grandparents wouldn't recognize it, then maybe it's maybe it's not a good thing. And I think the other one is around the food labels. If you see huge number of ingredients with, you know, all sorts of numbers and things you don't fully understand, then, you know,
if you cannot pronounce it, you shouldn't eat
processed.
But there are some diets out there that support the whole eating more like nature, or how the cavemen used to eat, like paleo is one of them. Do you think it's really helpful to eat like that, or are you saying, like, no, it's still a diet, it's not what you should eat or the way you should eat?
Okay. Yeah, so I guess a couple of points around that. Anything that has a lot of rules and is really strict, generally I'm not too keen on. One, because I'm the sort of person, as soon as you tell me not to do something, I want to do it. That's just my nature. So I don't think rules are meant to be broken. And so that's one part. I think when anything too many rules or cutting out too many foods. Look, I think there's some very good things about the paleo, in that you're getting back to nature, and there's more emphasis on whole foods and you know, lots of vegetables and things. I think it does cut out some foods that are potentially very healthy and that we don't really need to. So, for example, a lot of the legumes and the lentils, those sorts of things, I believe, and a lot of research does show that they're excellent sources. You know, they're great, a great source of soluble fiber, and the type of high carbohydrates that are contained in those foods are actually handled really quite well by the body. And obviously a lot of cultures rely on those sorts of things as one of their main staples and protein sources. I also, you know, some of the really strict ones cut out all fruit and whatever, and I think fruit's a good thing. And but particularly, you know, focusing more, I guess, on berries and some of those sort of lower carbohydrate type things. So I think it's anything that's getting away from ultra processed food, I think is a good thing. I know some people who do adopt a paleo type diet and enjoy it. I like to be a bit more flexible about things, and I guess I prefer to see more of a plant-based, and that's a little bit from health because a lot of the research shows that having a diet more based on plant-based is good. And it's also, I guess, just environmental sustainability. I mean, I don't, yeah, but so I think that is that is certainly one way of eating. But I also think a plant-based diet, or having a bit more fruits in it, and having some legumes and things that are generally removed from a very strict paleo diet, I think can be good as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just that word diet as well, isn't it? I think Mediterranean is a nice way of eating. I think there's lots of research to support that. I also like the idea around intuitive eating, or just learning to have a good relationship with food, and that rather than a diet per se, it's almost like the 80-20 rule. If you're eating very healthy foods, most of the time, and then you can enjoy, a small slice of cake or whatever else now and again. So you can still enjoy life, still be social, still nothing's off limits, but you get to choose what you would like, and when you enjoy it. So that's sort of my approach. However, on saying that, things do suit different people, and I've seen everything from a very low carbohydrate diet to a very high carbohydrate diet, and people do well on every type of thing in between. So it is so individual.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And you said before that the mind and the gut are working together. So how important is mindset when it comes to healthy living?
Yeah, I think it's critical now, and so much so, like I sort of shared, that I've sort of made this transition from academia into business and supporting people more in a hands-on approach, as opposed to more through my research and my teaching. And so I actually now, in all the support I do, I talk about mindset, menu, and movement, and they're sort of the three pillars that I use as the foundation. And for me, that was quite a new thing, the mindset, and fully appreciating how important it is. So I think, one, in terms of just having a positive and growth mindset, having the resilience, and I think it's important for developing healthy habits, and so much of enjoying a healthy life and good well-being, I think, is about building healthy, sustainable, enjoyable habits, and sort of making some things just automatic. It's not, it's like brushing your teeth. You don't have to think about it. You get in your half an hour or hour, whatever it is, of enjoyable movement a day. And I think I mentioned that to you because I sort of have a bit of an aversion around the word exercise. Because to me it means hard work and sweating it out in the gym. So I like to use, enjoyable movement as something that you're active, but it's something that you really enjoy and look forward to doing. So I think mindset is very important for habit formation, healthy habit formation. And I also think we know a lot now about the stress hormones and how stress can impact negatively long term. As you said before, in the short term, it's great, from running away from tigers and things back when we needed to. But nowadays, so many of us are under chronic stress, and it's not good, for the gut, for general health, for the immune system. So I think doing things to strengthen the sort of mindset and have a more positive approach often can be very effective for managing stress as well, and helping us have more of a sense of confidence and more of a sense of control about, I guess, how we react to things that happen in life. So I think it's really important. So I include it in all my programs and support now, which is interesting because we don't tend to do a lot of that traditionally in nutrition. It focuses very much on the nutrition content of foods, and perhaps we do a little bit. We focus on counselling and coaching, but that's why I guess I'm very attracted, and I like the stuff that you do, and very attracted to including the mindset as part of it, because as we all know, behavior change is so complex, and just giving someone a recommendation of what to eat, I mean, that's not enough. That's a very narrow way of looking at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious about the stress, because a lot of people are going through stress, especially now with COVID going on. What are signs of stress? Because a lot of people only recognize that they have stress when it's basically already too late, with a burnout or mental breakdown, or when they cannot sleep anymore. So what are
Yeah.
early signs of having
Yeah.
stress? Because there are a couple of different types of stress that you may not always recognize.
Yeah. That's very true. So I guess you've picked up on all the big ones that are often extreme or chronic stress, with people having problems sleeping, problems eating, memory problems, not being able to concentrate, not being able to regulate moods properly. Those are all sort of signs more on that end. But even earlier on, I think it's the feeling of being overwhelmed or not being able to think clearly. And it can, for some people, actually come to me with gut issues. And then we soon work out, particularly with some people with irritable bowel syndrome, there can be a big link. And if they're very stressed, it can actually lead to some symptoms, gut symptoms, which may feel like things like nausea or sometimes bloating and pain as well. So I think, it varies for different people. The other thing that, so I'm seeing a lot of that at the moment is and then things that I'm seeing is people are often having a lot of coffee or a lot of caffeine to try and get them through the day, as well as lots of munchies. And while a little bit of caffeine can actually be very good in terms of helping you concentrate and memory and even exercise and sport, it does, because how it does that, it helps to stimulate some of the stress hormones and cortisol and things like that. Having too much can actually make you feel more stressed, increase anxiety, and have problems with sleep. And so that's a little bit of a tricky, and that combined then with alcohol. So I see a lot of people living on coffee or energy drinks during the day, and then a lot of alcohol at night to help them unwind. Yeah. And those two combined with stress, it just then becomes a bit of this tricky self-fulfilling cycle that can be quite hard to break. Yeah. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of people, the signs you just mentioned, for a lot of people that is normal, or that they are overwhelmed in business because I'm too busy.
That's right. I know, isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming like it's a normalization of having stress, being busy all the time, and
it's very true, and almost wearing it like a badge of honor. How are you going? Busy. Yeah. And that I was joking with with a colleague, actually, just saying how I've really noticed, particularly in the past month, how many people I'm supporting with emotional eating and drinking. And I was saying that same thing, living on coffee during the day and alcohol at night. And my colleague said, "Oh, well, that's normal though, isn't it?" And I was thinking, it doesn't have to be. But that's right, the fact that very high level executive operating at these high levels are just thinking, yeah, but we all do it, it's just normal. Yeah. And I think that can become a problem. It has become normal for a lot of people during this time, but really that's not the sort of thing that's doing your body or your mind any good long term. And the problem is, we can perhaps cope with that for a while, but as soon as we go over that threshold, or we get sick, or those of us who are a bit older and in our prime, certainly I've noticed in being in my 40s, I don't bounce back like I did in my 20s. And that can often be the time that people start to take more interest in their nutrition or their health, because they gain weight and get aches and pains, but they might realize that they're just not the same as when they were younger. And so I sort of realize they need to start taking a bit better care now if they don't want it to get worse over time.
Yeah, because it is a long-term process, isn't it, right? When you are eating unhealthy or having stress for a long period of time, it results in getting diseases or not feeling well. And basically your body, what I've learned is it's always trying to protect you. It's always trying to do the best for you. But at some point, if you are not supporting your body, it cannot support you anymore. So when you're experiencing headaches, migraines, like real bad diseases, then it's basically a sign too late to change. Well, is it too late to change a habit, or isn't?
I would say that it's never
that?
too late to change. Like I think, so I think, exactly. So even people with cancer or heart disease or diabetes, like you can still do improvements. But obviously that's it's like, trying to plug a hole with the water gushing out after it's already happened. Obviously, if we prevent that from happening in the first place, then that's much better. And I do think that is one of the things which is hard with nutrition and fitness and even mindset, is that particularly when we're young, the body's an amazing thing. We can cope with a lot of things. But so I support a lot of clients with chronic disease and lifestyle disease. So things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and then of course the cancers. And because they do take decades to develop, so often they don't present themselves until the earliest is often 40, but it might be 50, 60. And that's true but I think the other thing is the body does sort of try and communicate, and we got to be a bit more in tune and not try and, so, when we do sort of feel the aches and pains or the stomach pain now and again, or the headaches or whatever else, and then often we just try and soldier on, and then the body will keep going. And then I do think we often get those little wake-up calls, and then they sort of get big. If we don't listen to them, they get bigger and bigger, and then unfortunately it might be a really big wake-up call and a big health scare or diagnosis, and it may be too late. But in most cases, I think that there is quite a lot we can do in terms of lifestyle, to even with things that are incurable, at least in terms of quality of life, they can have a big impact. The other thing which is interesting, I noticed then, so a lot of these things may have taken decades to develop, and then someone eats healthy or goes to the gym for a week and expects it to be fixed, but it took 30, 40 years to develop. So it's still going to take some time. But the remarkable thing is that often, so for example in gut health, often within 14 days or so of changing your diet, you can start to feel improvements, which to me is remarkable. And then certainly within a few months, often you can then visibly see the difference. And you think of all those internal biochemical changes and everything that's actually happening inside your body. It's still, to me, the fact that you can significantly improve your health and well-being within a few weeks to a few months, and definitely within half a year or more, big changes. And I think sometimes we've got to just remind people of that. And that's why focusing on lifestyle and being more sustainable rather than these crazy diets or crazy things that people can only stick to for a short amount of time. Really for the rest of your life, spending, and it's not, I don't like thinking about, we go on a diet and then we can relax for a bit. It's more about finding a way that works for you, that you can sort of continue, it does become part of your lifestyle, because it's something, and then I think that's, when you feel healthier and you feel better, and compared to when you were feeling stressed or unfit, like the body then likes it, it craves it. And so I think that's the key, sort of constantly looking for different improvements and things that you can do. And try it. Somehow we need to sort of disconnect ourselves a little bit from the busyness and the social media and all of that, and get a little bit more in tune with what's going on, and listen to some of those messages our body is trying to tell us.
What is your biggest lesson from all the years of experiencing and being in the health industry, being in the medical industry as well? What is your biggest lesson you've learned that you could share with the listeners, share with the world when it comes to that?
That is a great question. That's a great question. That's a good question. There's a couple. So I think the first is probably that we are all individual. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work the same way for someone else. And that we generally have, you know, we listen to the advice of the experts, but we do, you know, we're more familiar with our own bodies and how we feel and whether something is improving or not. So I think don't be afraid to have some sort of trust in terms of what feels good or what works for you and that individual component. So I think that's one. The second one is that it's so much, you know, it's all about balance and synergy and doing stuff that works together. I think I very much used to just think, so a lot of my colleagues are, you know, in the exercise area, and we sort of have these debates, what's more important, nutrition or exercise? And we'd waste hours debating. At the time, I thought it was a debate, whereas now I'm kind of like, why are we even saying this? It's like hand in glove. They all, you know, the mindset, the nutrition, the exercise, and what, you know, financial support, all the different layers that you want to add to that, you know, they all work together. It should be in balance and synergy. So it's, to me, it's not really like one's more important than the other. It's by doing little improvements in all of those areas, we can have a huge improvement overall. And then I think my third one is that a bit about the consistency. And I, you know, being a bit of a black or white person, and thinking that, you know, you had to follow this particular method for a while, or you had to work out in a particular way. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. And because often those goals were so unrealistically high, then they're very hard to sustain. And I think what I've sort of fully appreciated now is just those little simple things, sometimes crazy simple, like, you know, doing a 10-minute walk or a little bit of meditation, or going to the farmers markets once a week and having lots of fresh food. But if you're doing that consistently over time, they really, really, really do add up. So to summarize, I think one, it's so individual. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for the other. I think second is really try and get in tune with your own body, and you know your body best, and you know, listen to those warning signals, get the expert advice, and fine-tuned, work out what's going to work best for you. And third, I think don't have to make it too hard. Like, enjoyable, forming healthy habits and sustainable and consistency actually can have a tremendous impact. And I think that's actually really good news for a lot of people who think, you know, health has to be hard, or exercise has to be, you know, it's all too hard. I think making it fun and sustainable and supportive and whatever is actually really good news. It's good news. And the final thing, because I can't resist, is just how fascinating the body is. Like, really, it's remarkable how adaptable we are, how flexible we are, how much that we can cope with so much more than we know. But likewise, if we start, you know, improving the way we eat and exercising a bit more, the body adapts to it. So it's really remarkable. When we've got to appreciate it more and not take it for granted.
Exactly. Yeah, our bodies are incredible. It's amazing and fascinating. So if people have questions about this, or about what you're doing, or want to work with you, how can people find you?
Yeah, I think my website's probably the best. So that's drliznutrition.com. And otherwise, I'm on all the socials as Dr. Liz or LINC Nutrition. That's LINC with a C. And I do regular webinars and things. And I love, you know, having these excellent discussions and people asking questions and things. And, you know, because of my experience with my friends and even my own journey with stress and burnout, you know, very happy to talk and spread the love. And I think the more that we share these sort of stories and tips, support one another, the more that we can get the message out there that, you know, it doesn't take too much to actually improve your health and your happiness, and just what a tremendous difference it has in your life. That you know, we need to sort of spread the love, spread the message, spread the love.
Yeah, Well, thank you so much. I will leave all the details in the description box so people can find you and contact you if they want to or ask you questions. Now, I want to thank you a lot for this conversation, and I hope it helped at least one person out there to understand that health is it can be fun, can be easy, but it is really important to live a healthier lifestyle, to be able to do whatever we love to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you.
Which is what it's all about. My pleasure. So good to chat. Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Bye.